Liam and Clara had been married for 12 years. A love story that had once felt like a fairy tale, but had gradually settled into the quiet monotony of routine. They had met in their late 20s, drawn together by a shared passion for indie films and hiking. Back then, their differences had been complementary, forming a delicate harmony. Liam, a reserved yet thoughtful architect, found comfort in structure and predictability, while Clara, a freelance graphic designer, thrived on spontaneity. But what once made them whole now felt like fractures in a fragile foundation. Their 9-year-old daughter, Sophie, was the bright light in their lives. She had inherited Liam's quiet patience and Clara's artistic flair, filling their home with her laughter and endless sketches. Yet, despite the warmth she brought, the house itself felt colder. Life in their suburban neighborhood was stable, predictable, and suffocating. Liam's recent promotions had tethered him to longer hours at the office, while Clara's freelance work had dwindled into sporadic projects. Their conversations had been reduced to grocery lists and school schedules, and the laughter that had once filled their evenings had become nothing more than a distant echo buried in old photo albums. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table eating reheated pasta, the silence stretched too thin. Clara suddenly slammed her fork down, her voice trembling with unspoken frustration. "Do you even see me anymore?" she blurted, her eyes searching Liam's face for something, anything. Startled, he looked up from his plate. "What's wrong?" "Everything." She gestured toward the cluttered living room, the stacks of unopened mail, the half-finished projects collecting dust. "We're stuck in this cycle. When was the last time we did something that felt like living, not just existing?" Liam frowned, adjusting his glasses. "Clara, I'm trying. Work has been." "Work has always been," she cut in, tears threatening to spill over. Meanwhile, Jenna's husband just surprised her with a weekend in Paris. "Paris, Liam. We haven't even left the state in years." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "We'll plan something. I promise." But to Clara, promises had become nothing more than empty words meant to fill the silence. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived, a sleek, glossy envelope from Oliver, Liam's old college roommate. Oliver, the eternal bachelor, had just sold his tech startup and was throwing an extravagant rooftop party to celebrate. Liam hesitated. Crowds had never been his thing. But Clara's eyes lit up with something he hadn't seen in months. "We're going," she declared, and for the first time in a long while, she looked like the woman he had fallen in love with. The night of the party, Clara slipped into a crimson dress she hadn't worn in 5 years, her reflection in the mirror whispering memories of a time when she had felt beautiful, desired. Liam struggled with his tie, glancing at her with quiet admiration. "You look beautiful," he said softly. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Oliver's penthouse was a world of glittering excess, champagne towers, a skyline view, and a sea of unfamiliar faces. At first, Clara stayed close to Liam, but as the evening unfolded, she found herself drawn toward the balcony, lured by the twinkling city lights. That was where Oliver found her. "Clara Hart," he greeted her with an easy grin. "Still stealing the spotlight, I see." She laughed, though a quiet tension lingered beneath the surface. "You've done well for yourself. Luck and timing." He shrugged, leaning against the railing. "Unlike Liam, always the steady one." The words stung in a way they shouldn't have. "Steady isn't always enough," she murmured. Oliver raised an eyebrow. Spoken like someone who's looking for more. Inside, the music swelled as he extended a hand. "Dance with me." Clara hesitated, but then she placed her hand in his. Across the room, Liam stood in a corner, nursing a beer, watching as Clara twirled under the fairy lights. Her laughter rang through the air, carefree in a way it hadn't been in years. A tightness gripped his chest. He had never belonged in Oliver's world of effortless charm and reckless extravagance, and as he watched his wife shine in it, he felt like a ghost in his own life. By midnight, the noise became unbearable. Pulling out his phone, he sent Clara a text. "Heading out for air. Meet you at the car." No reply. Upstairs, in the quiet hush of Oliver's bedroom, Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her heels discarded on the floor. "This was fun," she admitted, though her voice wavered. Oliver sat beside her, his gaze unwavering. "You don't have to go back to the same old routine." His hand brushed against hers. She didn't pull away. "What if I want more?" she whispered. His kiss tasted like rebellion, like freedom. And for a fleeting moment, the guilt tried to surface, but the intoxicating feeling of being wanted again drowned it out. By the time Liam found her, She was adjusting her earring in the hallway mirror, her cheeks still flushed. "Ready to go?" he asked. She nodded, but something in his gaze lingered. The drive home was silent. Liam wanted to ask, "Who were you with?" Instead, he simply said, "Sophie's art competition is tomorrow." Clara stared out the window, her reflection fragmented against the passing streetlights. The weeks that followed were filled with strained conversations and unspoken accusations. Liam buried himself in work, while Clara stayed out later and later, citing client meetings that never seemed to appear on her schedule. Sophie noticed. Her once cheerful questions about family movie nights were now met with distracted responses and forced smiles. One afternoon, while folding laundry, Liam found a crumpled receipt in the pocket of Clara's coat, a $300 charge from a boutique hotel downtown, dated the night of Oliver's party. His fingers trembled as he turned to her, holding up the slip of paper. "What is this?" he asked, his voice raw. Clara's face went pale. She met his gaze but said nothing. "Don't lie to me," he whispered. Her silence spoke louder than any confession. Liam didn't need more proof, but it came anyway. Oliver's late-night texts, playful emojis, thinking of you messages. And yet, Clara convinced herself it was nothing, just a distraction. Until Oliver invited her to a gallery opening, and she agreed without hesitation. Afterward, they slipped into a dimly lit wine bar. As Oliver traced slow circles on her wrist, he murmured, "You deserve more than leftovers, Clara." "This wasn't real," she whispered. "Then let's make it real," he promised, pressing his lips to hers. At home, Liam studied the gaps in her calendar, the unexplained absences. A pit formed in his stomach. He made a decision that sickened him. He hired a private investigator. A week later, the photos arrived, Clara, laughing with Oliver on a park bench, her hand tucked into his coat pocket. Liam stared at the images until his vision blurred. That night, an envelope waited on the kitchen counter. When Clara walked in and saw it, she froze. "Is this why you've been so distant?" she asked, her voice cold. Liam let out a bitter laugh. "You erased us." Down the hall, Sophie's bedroom door creaked open. Clara lowered her voice. "I needed to feel alive again," she whispered. "You stopped trying. And you stopped choosing me." The divorce came swiftly. Clara moved into a sleek downtown loft. Oliver's promises faded, their love affair shrinking into rushed ice cream trips with Sophie squeezed between his plans. Months later, Clara stood outside Liam's house, watching the warm glow from the windows, the soft curl of smoke from the chimney. Inside, Sophie waved from behind the glass before disappearing. Clara turned away. She had chased a fleeting high, mistaking it for happiness. But in the end, the echoes of what had been drowned her. Liam, however, had learned to find music in the quiet,